Hey guys, it's Bill from BlenderBrit. Today we're going to be doing a tutorial on making a wooden boat, a little rowboat. Should be quite fun. I'm not going to go into an insane amount of detail. We're not going to cover rendering settings or compositing or anything like that. It's going to be modeling, texturing, materials, UVs, that type of thing. There's a startup file underneath the blend file, underneath the video, sorry, that will allow you to start in the same state I'm in. So it should be fun, so let's get started. Right, so if you downloaded the startup file that's underneath the video, you'll have something that looks just about like this. It's a couple of reference images, one from the side and one from the top. And we also have, on layer 10 here, just a basic floor and lighting setup so we can preview the model. Because we are just going to focus on modeling, texturing, UVs, that type of stuff in this tutorial. The rest we're not going to be covering. Anyway, I'm going to jump over to side view, number pad 3, and add in a cube, which will start the shape of our boat, hopefully. Great. Okay, I'm going to tab into edit mode and then press Z to go into wireframe mode. And then we need to box out the basic shape of our boat here. So there we go. I'm then going to press Ctrl R and use the mouse wheel to increase the count to 3 loop cuts, which I'll place in like that. And then using box select one at a time, I'm just going to grab these vertices here and start pulling them into the shape of the boat. Now we're not going to use this reference image particularly closely. It's literally just to give us the basic shape, and then from there we're pretty much going to wing it. In general, I definitely recommend using reference images, but I couldn't find any that I liked that didn't have usage rights and whatnot. So I figured everyone knows what a rowboat looks like, or if you don't, then well, I can't help you. So once you've got it done right from the side view, like there, press number pad 7 to jump to top view, and then we're going to do pretty much the same again. But to save duplicating any work, first I'm going to add another loop cut, press Ctrl R, add in a loop cut, and then delete all the vertices to the left of that. So then we've just got the one half, and then if I add in a mirror modifier and turn on clipping, we've now got a mirrored object. If you don't know what clipping does, that just means the vertices that are at the mirror point lock together. You see, I can't separate those, but if I turn off clipping, I can then overlap or pull away, etc. But for this, we definitely want clipping on. Right, so from top view, do the same as we did before, grab the vertices and start bringing them in to the shape of the boat. Yep, almost there. Yeah, close enough. Okay, so that is pretty much it for the reference images. So I'm going to press number pad 5 because I don't really like working in orthographic mode when I can avoid it. And you can see here we've got a basic boat sort of shape going on, which is brilliant. First thing we need to do is delete these 3 vertices there because they are no use whatsoever. And then I'm just going to scale this line in just a little bit. But first I'm going to set the pivot point to be the 3D cursor. So now when I scale, it scales towards the 3D cursor rather than the median point of the selected vertices. So 3D cursor selected, and then scale along the x-axis only, and then just pull that in just a little bit to give us a kind of boaty shape. Awesome. Okay, with that done, we're going to separate this out into a bunch of different objects, because we'll be using different parts for different things. So first of all, let's get rid of this big back plate here. Just select it, then press P, and then separate by selection. I'm going to do the same with this front bit. Separate by selection, and these side bits here. Awesome. So now we've got a rear bit, a bottom bit, the sides, and that little front, whatever you want to call it, bit. And now we're good to go. We'll be using each one of these for building in the individual planks of wood to build up the boat. So first of all, I'm going to select this side bit, and then I'm going to hit Shift and H, because that will hide everything except what I've just selected, which is what we want, because I just want to focus on this. Now we're going to add in some loop cuts. Now these will essentially be the planks of wood that make up the side of our boat, and I want about 4, so that'll be 3 loop cuts. Yeah. Actually, maybe I just want to see what it looks like with 2. Yeah, we'll stick with 2 loop cuts, so 3 planks of wood. And then on each of these loops, I'm going to grab that loop, and I'm going to hit V. And what that does is it tears this portion off, and I'm going to do the same with that. V, so that's torn off now. Just so these are now they're separate shapes within our object, rather than being connected. And then I'm going to regret doing that, aren't I? Yeah, sorry, I'm taking that back because I forgot a step that's quite important. Okay. Right. Sorry, I've recorded this a few times. I made a few errors, and I just had one of those days, I think. We will get there though, will we not? So, right. Select the 4 horizontal edges and the end ones there. Leave out these ones. And then what we're going to do with those is increase the mean crease to 1. So then when I add in a subsurf modifier, which I'm going to do just now, it will not allow the shape to deviate from these crease points, which will mean we'll get a nice smooth curve along the along each plank of wood, but without ruining the shape that we've made. So then I'm going to hit a subsurf, turn it up to about 3, give us plenty of vertices to work with. I'm going to tab out to object mode so I can turn on smooth shading, and there we go, looking good. Now is the point where we highlight this and hit V to separate, and then this one V to separate. Right. Next stage is to add in a solidify modifier. So I'll hit that. We don't want it too thick because, well, we just don't. Maybe 2 centimeters, 0.02. Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll look pretty nice. And then we're also going to put in a bevel of, it's literally just the slightest amount, probably like 2 millimeters, which is 0.002 in Blender units. That's probably not enough, actually. Let's have a look. A little bit more. Let's go 0.005, 5 millimeters. Ooh, way too much. 0.003. Maybe an extra segment. Yeah. Now you'll see here you're getting this kind of liney distortion thing along your shape, and that's because the bevel modifier is applying a bevel to every possible edge, and we've got loads of edges in there that do not need this. So the way to fix that, you've got a couple of methods. You can go into edit mode and manually say what edges you want, which is probably the best way to do it, but the lazy way, and the way we're going to use today, is we're going to use it based on angle. So if I turn it to angle and then set it up to something quite high, like 70, only an angle of 70 degrees or more will then have a bevel applied to it, which fixes that issue nicely and still gives us nice bevels on the edge of each plank. Exactly what we wanted. And already that's starting to look quite nice, which makes me happy. So I'm now going to press Alt-H and bring back our other shapes, and we're going to duplicate that process a few times, or at least parts of it. First of all, I'm going to grab this back plate, and then I'm going to hit Shift and right mouse button on our planks there, so I can copy over all the modifiers. So with those selected, press Ctrl L, hit modifiers, boom, and then that gets all of our modifiers, which is awesome. There's a few things we don't need though, so let's have a look. We definitely don't need the mirror. We probably don't even need the subsurf. Oh, maybe we do need the mirror. Didn't realise. Oh, there we go. So it's just the subsurf we don't really need there. Awesome. Now what we'll probably want to do eventually is bring that in a little bit. In fact, no, what we'll do is, these are currently solidifying inwards, so we're going to change that to solidify outwards, so minus 0.02 rather than positive, and that will fix that issue there. Now this fits in nicely, or nicely-ish anyway. Only change we're going to make here is bring the line here just down just a little bit, But rather than hitting G and Z, which will start to change the shape of it, I'm going to press G twice, and that will slide this edge along the connected edges, just like that. So I'm going to bring that down to about there, and I'm also going to then select this shape and then the back shape and borrow the modifiers, except this one also wants a negative solidify. And then I'll probably want to bring that in a bit. It'll do for now. The only bit left then of our basic shape is going to be the floor. Now, it took me a few attempts to get this right, because we want to keep the plank shapes as they are. But if I add in some loops like we did before, you'll notice that they're all going into a point, like the way you'd expect them to, which is good. But it's not the way a plank of wood looks. The planks of wood just tend to go, well, kind of straight, don't they? So, the way to do that, there's two methods. The one I was going to do and toyed with, which does work perfectly well, so I'll briefly show you in case there's a reason you need to do it this way. I added in a plane, and then I scaled it down to fit the base, roughly about there, and then I manually added in the loop cuts, and then shaped these vertices to fit the floor like that, which worked really well. You then get the separate planks of wood and whatnot. And then I realised that it's the bottom of the boat. It's going to be submerged most likely. There's going to be stuff on top of it. So a wood texture with a bump map will do the trick. And if you can get away with something that easily, you always should, in my opinion. So that's what we're going to do. We're basically just going to have a flat plane in there. All we're going to need to do is just shape it a little bit, just because of the subsurf modifiers along there. It's put this out a bit. So if you add in a couple of loops there, and then move that one in a bit, might actually put on a solidify just to give it a bit of chunk to it. Don't want to go with chunk. And then an edge split to flatten it out. And I think that will actually work quite nicely. But if you're doing a scene where you're going to be seeing the bottom of the boat, I strongly recommend that little method I was just showing you, where you actually build the planks. But for anything else, it's really not necessary. So that is it for the basic shape. The next thing we need to do is start adding in the structures within the boat. I looked at a bunch of different designs. Some were more complicated to replicate than others. I found one that's quite simple-ish. So we'll be going with that one. So first of all, what I'm going to do is add in a plane. And this is going to be essentially our bench, the middle bench of the boat. So let's scale that up there, I'll grab that up there, scale it along the y-axis until it gets to kind of a benchy sort of size. That looks about right to me. And then we'll pull that in just a little bit to there, and maybe lower it just a tad. Yeah, about there. And then we're going to copy over most of the modifiers from that panel. So Control L modifiers. And we just need to get rid of a couple of these. We don't need the mirror modifier, we don't need the subs, but we do want the solidify and the bevel. Awesome. So there's our bench there. Amazing stuff. Now, while still in edit mode, I'm going to duplicate this because we're going to be using these same modifiers and shapes a few times, so there's no need to make separate objects for it. Shift D to duplicate, lock it to the y-axis and grab it up to the back of the boat. Y, yep. And then this one's going to be a bit higher. It's kind of like it's an extra bench. I've also seen some where a motor's been mounted on this kind of table-y bench bit. So whatever purpose you need it for, it'll work fine. Now because we're going to be reshaping these, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to add in that mirror modifier. Why double up on work when you don't have to? There we go. And then add in a mirror. Awesome. Make sure your mirror goes to the top, turn on clipping. Excellent. So now we only have to bring in this one side to fix this. One about there, and then one about there. Yeah, that looks pretty nice to me. And then we'll do the same with this one. Excellent. Bring that one in as well. Awesome. And then the only bit left now is that there's a kind of another one of these benchy, flat surfacey, whatever you want to call them, bits at the front. So let's do that. Goes right to the front, and also quite high, and a bit longer like that. So I might even angle this one. I think that'll look quite nice. Yeah, I'm going to angle it, because why not? And then, as we did before, just bring them in to match the shape of the boat. One there, and one about there. Give or take. Yeah, I think that'll do. So, I mean, it's starting to look quite boat-like. If I jump to my render mode here, I'm just going to bring the camera in a little closer. Camera, thank you. Oh, got that to medium point. There we go. This is why I like the quick lighting setup, because you can just dump it in, hit render, and you've got something to look at. And that's not, I mean, that's not too, it's not too bad. It's getting there. There's some other structures we want to build into the boat, but it's certainly getting there. Now, depending on how much detail you want to go into, you can go absolutely crazy with these things. One thing they do tend to have, and I found it a little bit fiddly, so I'm not 100% sure if we'll do it today, but these boats, some of them have like, I'll just turn on grease pencil for a sec, like little supports that support the bottom and the side there, and then mirrored over the other side. They're just, they're a bit too fiddly to try and squeeze into this tutorial, I think, but we'll see how it looks after we've got the main shape in place. Now, the only real bit left to do now is there's like a side bit so people can sit on the side of the boat. It's also where the mounts for the oars get placed, stuff like that. So, we're going to need some of these edges. First of all, though, I'm going to start applying some modifiers, because we don't need to be changing these anymore. We don't want them mirrored in most cases, so we can do separate texturing and stuff like that. So, yeah, apply the mirror modifier on the sides there. Also apply the subs, but we might take that down just one, because I don't really think free's benefiting us that much. No, it's not. Boom. So now they're just normal shapes, but they're still being solidified, which we also want to apply, because we're going to be UV unwrapping all of this. I want this to be something that, if you wanted to, you could take into Substance Painter or paint with your sort of workflow in Photoshop, whatever, and you can't really do that easily if you're using loads of modifiers. So, let's apply that. We'll leave the bevel though. No need to apply that. And what I'm going to do is take that strip of edges. That's annoying. I was hoping just to get the top there, but it didn't want to play ball. Ooh. So yeah, this strip of edges I'm going to duplicate, and then Alt S to scale, but not along the, it's not going to work, is it? No, I don't like that at all. I'm trying to remember how I did this before. It looks super professional, doesn't it? Bill. I genuinely don't remember. Yes, I do. Ignore me, I'm an idiot. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And we'll select this edge of vertices, duplicate it, extrude it up a little bit, and then Control L to select that shape, and then separate by selection. And then we have this separate object that is like that. And then we can apply a solidify modifier to give us the thickness that we want. There we go. And then I just need to bring that down. Hey, that's more like it. and then I'm just going to move those just a little bit over so there's a bit of a lip hanging over. Perfect. And then I can apply a mirror modifier as well, which we'll be applying, of course. Excellent. So now there's that kind of lip to the boat. Still not quite perfect though, is it? Let's solidify that up just a little bit more. Kind of want these bits to meet. Yeah, that looks nice. I like it. Okay, a few things to apply now then. I don't really want the mirror modifier anymore, but we kind of need it just for this bit. So I'm going to apply the solidify, and then we just want to grab, in fact I've added a loop cut here. I'm going to grab this little face and then go extrude X, so it clipping, grab X so it meets in the middle, and then you're actually ending up with two faces squished together here, which causes all sorts of problems. So make sure you get rid of that middle face, press X and then delete the face. Boom. Excellent. Sort of. Maybe just move that back a little bit, along with just want a little bit of an overhang there. There we go. That is starting to look quite nice as far as boats go. I'm going to grab this bit and just move it up a little bit. At least that's what I hope I'm going to do. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so we're starting to get the shape of our boat. So once you get to this stage, we've got the huge fun of beginning to UV unwrap. The only thing I'm going to do first though, and notice that I don't particularly like that angle, so I'm going to bring that down to match the kind of angle of the boat. I think that's how boats are. I can honestly say I've not been on many rowboats, so I might be wrong there, but yeah, looks right to me. Anyway, so one step at a time, we're going to get all of this unwrapped, and it is going to take a while. And I really wish I had put in some UVs before applying the subsurface division modifiers, but anyway, it's not a big issue. To keep it more simple on the screen though, we'll hide things that we're not using. So with the side selected, I'm pressing Shift H again. I'm also going to do these one at a time. So click one vertice, Control L, highlights that entire part of the object, all the bits that are connected to the original vertice, and then press Shift H again and it hides everything within that. So we're just looking at that one little bit of geometry, which is groovy. The UV unwrapping for this is really simple, which is awesome. We're just going to oh my god, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. Right, there we go. So I want that edge, that edge, that edge, and that edge. I want that one, and that one, that one, that. In fact, you know what? I was going to make it so the wood texture stretches around where it makes sense to, but you're not going to see it. So we're going to go for super simple UV unwrapping, which is just basically the main edges at the side of the shape. So each one of those will have their own little part of the UV mesh. Yeah, it should work well. So with those selected, press Control E and then mark seam. And then what we've got to do, unfortunately, is everything else. I may, if I can't think of enough stuff to talk about as I'm doing this, jump to a time lapse, but we'll see how it goes. Well, that one, 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 and those as well. Yep, that looks good. Oh, I missed one. There we go. Mark seam. Alt H to bring it back. Control L. Alt H. Sorry, Shift H. There we go. Shift H. And more of these. One thing I'll mention actually, the reason I haven't done a huge amount of tutorials over the past couple of weeks is I've been trying to learn some new techniques that we can learn together in future tutorials. I've always had a weak spot when it comes to hair, for example. That's what I've spent a good couple of weeks on now, trying to learn and master realistic hair. Not quite there yet, but promising. So hopefully we'll have one of those soon. There's also a tutorial on creating like an autumn scene with a jetty. I'm planning on having this boat dumped into it, in fact. So that will be quite good, I think. And that's about it. Oh no, I did have one. I have one other one planned actually, and that is a nighttime highway scene. You know, with like cars driving back and forth with lights streaming, that type of look. I haven't even started on it yet. It's just an idea in my simple little head, so that might not pan out, but we'll see. We're almost done now with the UV unwrapping, just this last chap here. What I'll probably do is, yeah, this is definitely going to need a time lapse, isn't it? Because this is not fun viewing. But I don't know, maybe you find it fun, maybe you're weird, I don't know. But I certainly wouldn't want to watch someone UV unwrap an entire boat whilst chatting rubbish. Here we go. Excellent. So once you've got all of those seams marked in place, I'm going to bring up a little side panel here, split area, and turn this to UV, and highlight all of the vertices, press U, and then unwrap, and voila, you've got an unwrapping. Now what I would probably try and fix, I'm not going to today because it's already taken up far more time than I wanted it to, but you see these fin strips, it's because we've got these areas here, these fin, you can see it's highlighting them there. You'd want to disconnect some of these edges so you unwrap it like a piece of paper, and then you'll get a much more sort of sensible looking UV layout, which will make it a lot better and easier to move into things like Substance Painter and other external applications. But this will do for now, and I didn't want to overly stress us out with too much UV unwrapping. So with that bit done, I'll get rid of that for now. These are going to be easy, so we just want to apply the mirror, apply the solidify, and then it's literally just the same again. Boom, 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 boom. Oop. You can see why I sometimes hide layers that I'm not working on, because it can be a little bit difficult to see what you're doing. What the hell am I doing? Get it together, Bill. Right, so with those selected, mark seam, and the same here. Mark seam. That one's already got a mark on it for some reason. I have no idea why. Must have been selected when I was doing that first one. That's what I'm going to guess anyway. Ooh. No. Play nicely. Thank you. Good. So mark seam, and then we should get a nice, neat and tidy UV unwrapping. Perfect. So that's that unwrapped. That side, the sides are unwrapped. The floor's going to be very simple because we're just going to highlight everything. Oh, I need to apply the modifiers, apply the mirror, apply the solidify. Oh, I forgot to put in the solidify. Ugh. Had to make it more difficult for us, didn't I? So let's get that edge, that one, and 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 then the corner points. And that should give us a nice enough UV layout, I think. One thing we want to make sure though is that the big flat top is the right shape. If not, we'll do it in a slightly different way. No. Perfect. Exactly the shape we want. Awesome. Is that everything now? Not done you, have I? So, apply and apply. Ooh, hello. What's going on there? Ah, I turned the subs off. So we don't need the subs. Apply the solidify, leave the bevel, and then we just need the edges again. Tell you what I was playing with today. I only just started looking at, but I forget his surname, but Gleb, a quite well-known Blender artist, who's not obviously well-known enough for me to remember his surname, released a really good tutorial series on lighting. It's a paid product, but it looks like it's going to be really worth it. I'll have to be. I've only taken a brief look at them. I'll study them into more detail when I get the time. But I do think that's going to be worth having a look at. I think creativeshrimp.com is his website. Take a look if you've got a few minutes. I doubt very much you'll be disappointed. Ugh. So after all that applying, I've just realised that that is poking out of there, which is not good. So I'm just going to hide that in there. That's better. So the only thing that's not UV unwrapped now is this chap. So again, apply mirror, apply subs. Didn't really need the subs probably. Nope, didn't. And apply the solidify. There we go. It's probably a lot easier if I didn't have this stupid thing taking up half my screen. There we go. Oop. Doop-a-doo. Mark seam. Unwrap. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got our entire model unwrapped now. Didn't take too long. I'm now going to jump over to my nodes view. If you started with the same startup file that I have, you'll have this nodes set up. If you don't need it. It's just the layout that I like working with. And I'm going to connect. I've just selected the side panels here. I'm going to create a new material, wood, planks, or maybe boat, wood, plank, something like that. That'll do. And then we'll bring in an image texture. Now, you can use pretty much any decent sort of wood texture that's got that kind of plank look to it. I've got a couple here from cgtextures.com. The large files like this ones you have to subscribe, but the small ones will work in most cases, or any wood texture that's got the right sort of look that you're after. I think this one will work pretty well, maybe with a bit of colour correction. So let's have a little look. So that's our texture on the side there. Now I'm just going to change this to be a UV image editor, so I can tab into edit mode. Select all our vertices, and now we just scale it up until it looks right, basically. Which is about there, I think. A bit more. Ooh, pretty. Yeah, that's looking quite nice. Okay, and now you just duplicate that process all over the place. So selecting the seats, select wood planks, or scale these up a bit. Or do I want to scale these ones down? No, scale them up, scale them up, scale them up. We're going to rotate these 90. Nah, I liked how it was. Okay, so that's that done. Let's do the floor now, because that's the one we're going to try and get away with cheating. Yeah, you're not even going to be able to notice, really. Let's bring up a bit more. There we go. Another, good point. The only reason I'm scaling the UVs here rather than putting in a node setup to adjust the size that way is because the way we've unwrapped here, it wouldn't be good for Substance Painter. I wanted to do that originally, but it's not panned out that way. But if you were dumping this in Substance Painter, you wouldn't touch the UVs, but then again, you wouldn't be manually editing textures in cycles anyway. So yeah, depending on your workflow, you will be doing it differently. Well, that one actually looks right off the bat, doesn't it? Sweet. And then we just got this little top bit. Oh, maybe I didn't unwrap that yet. God, there's always one, isn't there? Yeah, I did unwrap it. Ugh. Get it together, man. That one as well, and that one, and that one. I do apologise about this, but sadly, there really isn't a quick way to do UV unwrapping. In most cases, if there was, everyone would use it, and it wouldn't be something that most people hate. Yeah, that might work. Okay, so with those all selected, I'm going to apply that mirror modifier, hit unwrap and see what happens. That should work nicely. Give that the wood material, back to rendered mode. Ooh, not too shabby. Scale that up until the wood looks about right. Yeah, that is not too bad. And then we just need to apply it to that one as well. Excellent. Rendered mode, and scale that up a bit as well. Right, so with our texture now pretty much how we want it, it's time to work on the material, because at the moment we've just got a basic diffuse shader in there, which obviously is not going to cut it. But before I do anything else, I want to adjust the colour here a little bit, because this is a very orangey sort of wood. I don't think it looks particularly great for a boat. I'm going for something that looks like it's been built in someone's little carpentry garage or whatnot as a hobby, that type of look. So I'm going to turn the saturation value down to a 0.75, adjust the hue up just a tiny bit to try and change this from orange to yellow. And yeah, 0.51 seems to work pretty well there. Yeah. Now I'm going to try and pick an area that's going to catch some light, because we're going to be working on the glossy part of our shader. Around there should just about work. So, next step is to add in a mix shader and a glossy shader. We're going to use two mix shaders for the glossy. First is going to mix in the Fresnel value, and then the second one will be used to let the texture itself dictate where the glossy should be applied. With just a straight mix, you can see quite there, we definitely have got the camera in the right place. We're definitely catching the light there, so that's handy. First step then, drop the Fresnel in to the mix shader, and a value of about 1.6 I've found works quite well for this sort of thing. I don't know if that's the physically correct value to use, but it looks okay to my eyes. Next, duplicate the mix shader, drop that in as well, and then connect this mix shader to the bottom value. It will default to the top, but we want it in the bottom, and then connect the diffuse shader into the top. And then this mix value will connect to a mask based off the texture. But first we need to make that mask. So, is mask the right term? I don't know. But yeah, we need to make a different, we need to alter the texture before plugging it in there. So, I'm going to drop that into the color ramp there, and I'm going to create a emission shader, and I'm going to duplicate this material output. Now, if you've not seen this before in one of my other tutorials or elsewhere, if you have two material outputs in the same node group, you can click between the two, which is really handy. So if I now drop the color ramp into that emission node, into the emission node, thank you, we then get the result of this, but I can easily go back to the original shader. Very handy. What we want out of this mask, I'm still calling it a mask, I don't care, is it's going to control where the specularity is. So if something's 100% white, it's going to be 100% of the mix value here, and if it's black, it'll be 0. Now we want quite defined areas where there isn't much glossiness, i.e. about there. Yeah, that's quite nice. But we want to brighten up the areas that are not receiving any, or are receiving it. So we'll drag this down a little bit until we get some very clear sort of wide areas. Basically trying to create quite a high contrast between the areas of the texture. And I think that will work pretty well. One way to see though is to drop it in. So let's have a look. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. I might want to experiment with brightening that up just a bit more. So it depends the angle you're catching the wood at. I could definitely go a bit shinier, I think. Oh, I know what I've done wrong. we've left the roughness of the glossy too rough, so we need to turn that down. So I'll adjust that, and then we'll bring this down to maybe a 0.075, a bit higher, maybe 0.1. Yeah, that's more like it. And now I just want to move this up just a little bit. Contrast is a bit too high between the two. Yeah, that seems to work quite well. So that's our glossy sorted and looking pretty nice. At least I think so. Hopefully you agree. Next up then is to do the same thing again, create another mask, but this time to control the bump for our material. So, texture, no, converter, color ramp. If you're wondering why this might sound a bit different to the rest of the tutorial, it's because I had some issues and had to re-record this part, and it's quite late and my brain is tired. So apologies if this tutorial is seeming a little bit disjointed. I'm doing my best not to let it affect things too much. Right, with this mask we need to do something slightly different. We don't want too much white in there. We want to go basically from mid-grey down to black. So we're only getting bump going in a negative direction rather than positive. Basically we just want the cracks in the wood. So I'm going to turn this down to exactly a value of 0.5. And then I'm going to bring this black one up just to make the crack areas a bit more defined. I think that will work quite nicely like that. Now we need a good place to showcase that when we plug it in. So I need a light to catch some cracked areas. Ooh, perfect. That'll be nice. So I'm going to drag these nodes back a little bit and disconnect that for now. And drag this down here, and this is where we'll make our little bump section. So I've got adding a vector bump node, dropping the color into the height, and then drop that into the normal of the diffuse and the glossy. You don't need to do the Fresnel. I don't know why, it's just how I've learnt it. Just do the same, it'll work. Or if you know the reason why, post it in a comment. I always like to learn new stuff. Okay, so we can see quite clearly what that's doing, and it's doing it too much, but it is putting bump where we need bump. So let's try a lower value, maybe 0.2. Looks quite nice. Let's try upping this a little bit. Ooh, I think I like that. Yeah, that's getting some nice defined bump. Up close, it really doesn't hold up too well, but then again, bump textures rarely do. But from that sort of distance onwards, it looks quite nice. So that's our basic shader. Now, I'm not going to go too much further into it. I was initially going to do some color variations, very similar to the technique that I used in my forest tutorial. And that does work perfectly for this type of thing. Just create a noise texture, feed it for a multiply and an add node, and then feed it into the hue and saturation, just like it is in that tutorial. And that works well as long as you assign the noise texture to be UV driven rather than generated. But it's a subtle effect, and it's not enough on its own. If you were going to be using this for something production wise, you'd want to create plenty of color variation with noise, but then also add in lots of grunge. It's going to be very rare that you'd have a boat like this that's just going to be sitting pristine out in nature. It's going to have mold growing up the side of it and dirty grunge bits, footprints, water, dirt, all of that type of thing, which is way more than the scope of what we're covering here. So I won't be doing any more on the material other than that, but that is a really good basic place to start building up the rest of the material. So that is about it. One thing I do want to show first is, just save that, the original boat that I did for this tutorial. As you can see, we've deviated a little from it. I did the full modelled bottom panels, which I really regret now. They were a pain in the bum, and it really doesn't make much difference in rendered mode. I'll show what I mean. If you compare that to the one we just had, the floor looks exactly the same practically to what we just did, and it's a flat plane with a texture on it. So yeah, definitely not worth doing unless you need it. But one thing I definitely wanted to draw your attention to, just limit these layers a bit, was the framework. It's quite fiddly to model. I didn't want to include it in the tutorial because it would drag on forever. This is already dragging on longer than it should because I've been chatting rubbish through half of it. But that sort of framework is present on a lot of these boats. It's what holds the main structures together. It's what the benches plug into. So if you're doing a shot that's going to be quite close in, you are going to want to add some of that sort of detail. Using pretty much the same techniques we've been using. I didn't use anything special for doing these. It's literally just it was a plane with a solidify, and I was manually extruding it bit by bit and placing it where it needed to go. Very simple, but time consuming and fiddly. But that's about it. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back soon. I think the next tutorial I have planned is the human hair one, realistically styling and rendering human hair. However, we'll see how that one goes, because I'm not going to lie, I've been having issues with it. Anyway, that's all from me.